The landscape is what our eyes can see around us. The horizon, the geographical features, the bodies of water, the vegetation, and along with these, the houses, roads, and works of man. The landscape is color, but it is also all of the sounds, scents, and physical sensations that make it come alive. Landscape is an experience of the senses, an emotion that literature and arts have always tried to convey. But the landscape is not only something to be viewed, it is also something to be interpreted and understood. The Italian landscape is extraordinarily beautiful, because in it one may discern, all at the same time, natural resources, agricultural activities, human settlements, and economic and social transformations that have occurred in different eras. The landscapes of this country show high mountains, hills, plain areas, water-rich basins and hot, dry areas, coastal strips, and large and small islands. In different areas, nature has made possible tall forests, coppices, expanses of arable land, vineyards and orchards, vegetables, pastures, and crops of all kinds. Historical events and complex economic processes have then acted upon these natural areas. The road system, the layout of the villages, the many forms of rural dwellings, from alpine farmsteads to valley-bottom farmhouses, all the way to the great estates of the South, tell the story of each community and its land. The medieval agricultural settlements, characterized by small farms that met the needs of their inhabitants, underwent profound transformations in the 15th century transition towards the first market economies, moving from subsistence polyculture to more extensive forms of cultivation and thus to a more uniform landscape. Starting in the Renaissance, the great geographical discoveries introduced new crops to Italy, and soon, traditional fields of wheat and vegetables gave way to vast stretches of corn, potatoes, and tomatoes. The evolution of transport during the 19th century and the construction of the first railway networks made new commercial activities possible, strengthening the typical crops of some areas and encouraged exchanges between regions. As a result, the agricultural landscapes of each area became more and more distinctive. It was the specialization of crops, together with the transport system, that gave rise in the early 20th century to numerous industrial districts, such as that of sugar beets in Emilia-Romagna, where, next to the vast plantations, processing plants and logistics centers were built to ship sugar by train throughout the country. At the same time, the large-scale land reclamation projects carried out in the early decades of the century made vast, previously marshy territories cultivable and colorful. There is no corner of the country that has not had its own evolution, no landscape that does not contain within itself the elements of an ancient tradition, the traces of historical and political events, the signs of even aesthetic concepts that drive people to improve their land, laying out new and more appealing landscapes. This is possible with human strength and with the use of working animals, but above all, with the help of mechanical tools and vehicles, initially rudimentary, and then increasingly more advanced. Agricultural work transforms the alluvial plains, those formed in ancient times by sediments carried downstream by rivers, the most important of which is the Po. The Po Valley crosses the northern regions, Piedmont, Lombardy, Veneto, Emilia-Romagna, and Friuli-Venezia Giulia. creating the ideal environment for growing wheat and corn. Field boundaries are often marked by rows of trees such as oaks, willows, maples, ash, and poplar trees. In the Vercelli area, the river water floods the rice fields, permitting the cultivation, once manual and now mechanized, of highly prized rice varieties. While in the more temperate plains of Veneto, Emilia-Romagna, and Lombardy, barley and legumes as well as beetroot have long been the traditional crops. But lowland agriculture also characterizes the Tuscan Maremma, the fields around the Tiber Delta and the Pontine Plain, an area that since its reclamation has become suitable for the cultivation of watermelons and kiwis, but also artichokes, zucchini, and spinach, both in greenhouses and outdoors. Vast cultivated expanses are also found in the south, for example, in the Tavoliere della Puglia plain, famous for its production of durum wheat, and in the irrigated areas for tomatoes, grapes, and prized vegetables such as turnip greens, cauliflower, and fennel. In areas irrigation systems cannot reach, it is possible to grow olives, one of the oldest and most valuable crop in the Mediterranean. Groves dominate the landscapes even close to the sea in Calabria and Liguria, marking the seasons winter rest, blossoming, and harvesting, once performed by hand, now done using advanced equipment that shakes the trees and collects the olives. In Sicily, from the slopes of Etna to the sea extends the fertile plain of Catania, where, in addition to pistachio crops, reign citrus groves, famous throughout the world for their varieties of Tarocco oranges, lemons, and clementines. Further south in the Val di Noto, the Baroque architecture blends in with the lines drawn by the extensive almond groves. Around the plains, other landscapes unfold, the volcanic ones, created by ancient eruptions, and today characterized by lakes and slopes, whose soils rich in mineral substances transmit an intense aroma to the crops grown there. Much of the Lazio landscape is volcanic in origin, as are the landscapes around Vesuvius in Campania, and those of the many islands of the archipelagos where compact, tracked agricultural vehicles climb steep slopes to grow fruit and fragrant grapes used to make unique wines. But the geography of the vineyards is infinitely vaster. It extends to a large part of the hilly lands, which cover more than 40% of Italy, and which are home to extraordinary winemaking productions that are extremely different from territory to territory. The Langhe, Monferrato, Roero in Piedmont, the Euganean Hills in Veneto, the Chianti and Brunello Hills in Tuscany, the inland territories of Umbria, Marche, Friuli, and Trentino are all areas that yield precious wines. Gentle hills wind along the entire backbone of the country, famous not only for its vineyards, but also for the infinite types of orchards, for which the machinery industry has created particularly agile and compact tractors, and a vast range of specialized vehicles used for treatments and harvesting. As one descends from the hills to the sea, both on the western and eastern slopes, he encounters the most diverse coastal landscapes, where agricultural activity merges with that of tourism and manufacturing, and where it is nevertheless important to preserve the natural environments. Lagoon landscapes in particular, where fresh water from rivers mixes with salt water from the sea, are rich in wildlife and biodiversity. Olive trees and vines are widespread along all the coastal strips, and also shape the landscape of the hills of Sardinia, while in other parts of the island, such as the Campidano Plain, cereals are grown. Mountain landscapes are a unique heritage, and they, too, are the result of transformations. Deforestation along the Alpine chain dates back to the Middle Ages, when the monks' abbeys began to assign small portions of land to farmers to clear them of rocks and reclaim cultivable farms from the forest. Starting in 1500, terraces appeared in mountain areas, built to improve cultivation and contain hydrogeological instability, a phenomenon that is still today a hazard requiring careful management of the old-growth forested areas. This is possible with technologies that plant new trees and that extract biomass selectively, feeding not only the wood supply chain, but also the bioenergy industry and fuels from renewable sources. Mountain areas, such as those of the Aosta Valley, the Apennine elevations of Abruzzo and Molise, or those of the Sardinian Ridge, offer pastures traditionally suited to livestock farming. In the eastern part of the Alpine Arc, the valleys of Trentino and Alto Adige are home to expanses of apple orchards nestled in the Dolomite landscapes. One of the most typical examples of the Italian landscape is represented by the noble villas, which in the 18th and 19th centuries appeared mainly in the northern regions, for example, Veneto and Lombardy. These were organized with a noble residence and farmhouses occupying large estates, designed in part as gardens and recreational and entertainment places, with some areas left wooded for hunting activities and others cultivated with rotational arable crops. In the face of the impressive growth of metropolises, which by 2050 will be home to over 70% of the world's population, new principles of urban planning and architecture are emerging. These include integrating farmland and wooded areas into the city and the creation of vegetable gardens for decorative purposes as well. The new concept of urban greenery includes terraces and vertical walls, where crops can be planted thanks to a new generation of specially designed mechanical vehicles and equipment. The landscapes tell the story of Italy. They are the wonderful synthesis of what nature has been able to offer and what men have been able to achieve. They are the result of hard work and ingenuity, the fruit of the collaboration between agriculture and industry. There is no agricultural district in Italy that does not have its own factories producing machinery and equipment designed to plow and fertilize each different territory, to protect and irrigate the crops, and to harvest the yields. These vehicles are the fruit of time-tested experience, and today of technological innovation and scientific research. Such knowledge has from era to era allowed us to lay out in perfect furrows and long rows, geometric tree-lined avenues and wide, colorful expanses, places where we work and live, which are also places of harmony and hospitality.